In this tutorial I'm going to be performing what is a potentially complex key, and I'm going to be exploring a couple of different techniques that are outlined by Mark Christiansen in his book After Effects Professional Studio Techniques. He's been covering these techniques since at least version CS3, but I still find that a lot of people don't really know how to apply these techniques, and they really are lifesavers. So I'm going to cover them in this session. So we can see here that we've got this skydiver shot against blue screen. Blue screen is always problematic, as you'll probably be aware, because of the grain and the noise essentially in the blue channel. We've got a little bit going on. Obviously, he's resting on a box here, which is kind of casting these shadows, and the actual sort of box is visible within this sort of crotch area. We've got this ribbon and a hell of a lot of motion blur in this ribbon, and areas where it's almost translucent. We've got this knife area, which on certain frames, let me just flip over to frame view. There's a few areas where there's a lot of motion blur on this, and so we've got a lot of areas where we've got a lot of fuzz around the knife. There's also quite a lot of blue spill on this knee pad. So there's a few areas. We may also see some around this side, but we'll take a look at that. So there's a few areas where this is problematic. Certainly very difficult to execute this as a single key, and certainly in a single pass within a key. So let's get started then. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I am limited for space within this screen capture software, so I'll just try and stretch out as best I can. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a garbage mat into this, and obviously what I'm wanting to do is make sure that I don't cut off any movement, but I don't have any excessive areas. So once I've applied that, I can just scrub through, make sure that I don't lose anything. I'm looking at that ribbon and seeing how far that comes down on the left, and also the knife moving about on the right. So I think we're well within range there, so that's okay as a garbage mat. I'm just going to bring the mask down and just name it garbage mat. A good practice to name your masks, I do apologise. So let's have our first go at pulling a key and see how we get on. So key light's on here, and this is going to give me the opportunity to describe and present one of Mark Christiansen's real cool techniques for making the initial selection of the screen color. A lot of people just get the color and just click on in an arbitrary way, and then start from there. Now, the selection of the screen color is the most important thing that you do with key light. There are 120 odd different properties within this tool, and they almost all take their initialization from this screen color. So it's really important that if we can possibly get this right, this initial selection, make the best possible selection that we can, the better. So a trick to do this is to put key light into status view, and now we can open up the shot in layer view. And if we turn render off then and look at these side by side, you can see now that we can effectively pick from one and have it affect the other. And we do that if we just get hold of the pipette now, and if I just hold down the Alt key now, and if you just see as I scrub around, you can see the variance as you pull around. Even though there are no discernible difference, as you can see from the eye in this area, you can see the difference it makes in the transparent areas. So what we're essentially looking to do here is we're looking to move around. We're looking to find an area which takes out as much of the area that we want to be transparent as possible, but without affecting the opaque area, which in this case is the subject. So let's say, for example, there was a good one around here. Let's go with that. Once we've made that selection, we can close down the layer view. Okay, so let's just give it a couple of percentage points of gain. Certainly don't want to be going too far. You can obviously sort of eliminate the transparent areas by stretching the gain, but when you do that, you start to create color corrections, and you start to create sort of edge edge erosion, which is actually counterproductive down the line. So you certainly don't want to be extending your grain beyond a couple of points. So I'm just going to go for 2 or 3. So the most suitable way of actually dealing with the transparent and the opaque areas is using the clip black and the clip white tool. So I'm going to start with the clip black, and I'm going to pull this up and try and get rid of as much of the transparent areas. Now if you take a look up in this left hand corner, for example, that's probably the most stubborn area, and it takes until round about there, a value of 36, before we've completely eliminated that. And if we now come down on the clip white, a subtractive approach, and again our goal in this case is to work within the subject and find and eliminate any grey pixels that are within. You'll see that as I do this, certain areas turn green, and this is Keylight's way of saying that these are areas that Keylight's identified for colour correction. So it's essentially a spill suppressor that's built into the tool. In most cases that could be problematic, but we'll take a look at that in a second. So what we're looking to do is get rid of the grey areas. Okay, so again we're down to these kind of values. Now these kind of values are not normally acceptable for your standard key. Normally you wouldn't want to be taking the clip black up anywhere beyond 20. You wouldn't want to be bringing the clip white down beyond 80. You'd be trying to maintain a 20-80 rule. So even if you were up a little bit on the clip black, you'd be wanting to come down commensurately less on the clip white. So this is essentially not a particularly good key, but that's how much we're having to stretch the clip settings in order to get anywhere near a desired result. And you can see that we've still got problems inside areas. Inside this crotch area, for example, we've still got grey pixels around the arm. So this is not an ideal solution, so we need to actually approach this a little bit differently. So the way I'm going to do it is to use 2 passes of the plate and have a key on each one of them. One is going to be the core mat, and one of them, if I just duplicate and rename, is going to be the edge mat. Now I'm just going to turn off and lock the edge mat for now. We're going to focus on the core. And what the core is essentially is going to be a holdout mat. I'm going to use it to basically fill all the areas that we want to be opaque. So all the areas inside the skydiver, I want to be white or variations of this green. I don't want any grey inside these areas, and I want black around the outsides. The problem that's going to cause is that I'm going to lose all the nice edge detail that you would normally have when you had the 80-20 rule in operation. So you can see there that if I take this back to some kind of state, again, if we just go to the, I won't be able to see that in status view, but you can see now as we look around this that we've got this nice semi-transparent area around the mat line, which is what we want to achieve, but we don't want to achieve it at the expense of holes in our mat. So what we need to do instead is we need to actually deal with the edges as a separate pass, and we need to deal with the core separately and without it affecting the edges. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the clip black right up until we've got absolutely no grey pixels in the outer area. So I'm around about here, around about 40. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring the clip white right down. Now this is 39. I can bring this right down if I type it in there to 40. Now what that's essentially done is that's taken out any grayscale pixels at all. So you can see now if I come to my mat line now, it's like a bitmap. There's absolutely no soft edge around this mat line now at all. So we've got a great inner mat, we've got a great outer mat, but what we've got is a harsh line. So we need to be using this layer here as an edge mat to actually bring that softness back into the edge, but we just need to pull the mat in a little bit so that it doesn't actually interfere. This harsh edge doesn't actually interfere with the soft edge that we're going to be creating. So to do this, I'm just going to bring a choker into the layer, and you can see that as I pull this, it just pulls the layer in slightly. So I'm just coming in a couple of percentage points there. You can see there it is without it, there it is with it. So it's just pulled it in from the edges, maybe just a tad more. Now a good way of actually looking at this is to turn the edge mat on. Obviously this is still in status view, but if I put that to intermediate now and look at this in the alpha view, we can actually see the effect of the core mat on the edges. So essentially, when we turn that on, we want to get this to the stage where it isn't affecting the edge mat at all. So let's work on the edge mat now. So back into status. This time we're not concerned about the filling in all the holes. We're not concerned about the outer edge. What we're concerned about is a nice soft matte line. So I'm going to bring my settings back up. I'm still happy with this blue selection, and I'm just going to pull this in a little bit. You can see here that I'm very much looking to maintain the 80-20 rule here. Okay, so somewhere around about there. Now you can see that we've a lot of mess. We've a lot of mess up in this top corner. We've a lot of mess around this knee. We've got a lot of grey pixels inside this crotch area. And I think the trick a lot of the time is not to actually try sort of squeeze in this. We can deal with this separately. For now, we're only really interested in maintaining a soft matte line, a soft edge. So I'm going to set that to intermediate result. So both of these are now intermediate result. You can see there when I turn the core mat on now, it fills in the holes. So effectively what we've got there is a two-pass solution to the mat. Now if we look at it in alpha view, we can see that it's a little bit grotty. We've got some mess around this knee. We've got a lot of mess in this crotch area. We've got some grayscale pixels in around the ribbon, and I think as we pull through, I'm just looking for a layout, a frame where we see a bit of motion blur. Maybe the knife's not too bad. That's not too bad. So to deal with these areas, what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to create instances of this comp, and we're going to mask these areas off so we can essentially perform separate keys in different parts of the image, and then we'll assemble them all together as a composite key. So to do this, I'm just going to start with my edge mat, and I'm just going to draw some masks. So I'll start with an ellipse, and I'll just get a mask into this into this sort of crotch area. Something like that. Just name it. I always like to just colour these a little bit differently as well, just so that they're visually easier to differentiate. And I need to set that to subtractive. You can see that I'm actually applying these to the edge, not the core. And we'll take a look at what we can do about the core in a second. In fact, I'll just turn the core mat off for now while we apply these masks. So we've got one on for our edge. We'll now get one on for our ribbon. So I'm just gonna come around here. I could have pretty much used a rectangle for that. So that's going to be the ribbon. Struggling a little bit now for space within the screen capture software. Again, we'll go for a different colour. Set that to subtractive. I think we're okay for this for this knife area. And I'll just deal with this knee. This is really arbitrary. I mean, this obviously your footage would be something completely different, and it would have its own challenges. So we'll call this one knee, and again give it a different colour. So I've got myself 4 separate masks on this. I'll just set that one to subtractive as well. And you can see that as I'm going along, we're kind of punching the image out, and that's essentially what we want to do. This is kind of, I'll just rename this comp actually. We'll call this one the main mat, and this is going to be the sort of the catch-all, the one that's got all the sort of the main areas, but none of the particularly problematic areas. So I am going to approach the problematic areas differently. Now we do have our core mat here, but at the moment when we turn it on, it kind of reinstates all the things that we want to hide. But we can actually deal with that by actually using a track mat. So we can set this, I will need to unlock it. We can set this, for example, to be an alpha mat, which kind of punches those out. Just turn that layer back on. And you can see now that this core is actually still filling in the potential holes inside the core, but it's doing it by using the transparency from the edge mat and adding that to the core mat. So we've got these areas chopped out. So we're now ready to make some duplicates. So this is my comp. I'm just going to duplicate it one time for each of those. Masks that I've created. So this is the crotch mat, this is the ribbon, this is the knee. Did I only have 3? Maybe I only had 3. Yeah, I did. So we'll leave it at that, and I'll get rid of that one. So what I need to do now is come into each of these, bring down the masks, and delete any of the masks that I don't need. So in this case I can get rid of them all except the crotch, and then I need to set the crotch to additive. And now you can see that we've now pinpointed this very specific area of the image, and we can now use this to perform a brand new key. So I'll just set this back to RGB. Again, we can use the same approach as before. We can bring out the layer view, we can set this into status, and now we can make a brand new selection of our colour from an area within the problem. So let's go for somewhere that maybe that looks okay. I think what I'll do actually is reset the whole thing, put it back to status, and then make a new selection. So we're looking for an area again inside here which takes as much of the transparent area out of that, like there, but doesn't actually affect the area that we want to be opaque. So again, we can just bring up the clip black to take out all the transparent area, and then bring the clip white down until maybe a little bit. Let's just bring those back and just take the gain up a little bit. I'll do it with a combination of both. So now I can just extend the clip black a little bit and then bring the clip white down accordingly. So somewhere like there, that looks okay. So we've got this nice semi-transparent area around the edge. We've got good transparency in here and good opacity on the outside. So I can set that now to intermediate, close down my layer view, and essentially that is the principle that I'm going to use on all of these composite parts of the mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the screen capture, I'm going to quickly whip through and complete them, and then we'll look at how we can assemble this into a composite. Okay, so here we are. We've got an isolated mat now for the knee. for the crotch and for the ribbon. So let's look at how we can assemble these now. So I'll start with my main mat, and I'm going to drag it down onto the Make New Comp button, and that kind of does what it says on the tin. It creates me a new comp and puts the main mat inside. Again, I'm going to use this same principle, so I'm going to put the crotch mat on and drop it on there, and you see that that concatenates and it adds to the key. Now, one thing I do want to point out here, if we just come into this and take a look a little bit closer, see this little area here, and this is essentially the it's where the two mats are overlapping. And the way that After Effects works is that it kind of pre-multiplies the mats. So essentially, there's a mathematical operation going on here, which isn't completely clearing the sort of the semi-transparent edges, if you like, the little bit of dither on the edge of the mat. So the easy way that we can deal with that is just using a blend mode, the alpha add blend mode, and what that does is that basically sets the matte edges to additive, so they add on to each other, so that we end up with a fully transparent edge to the mask. And we need to use that same approach with the others, so we can bring our knee onto this, and we can bring our ribbon onto this, and again we can just select both of those and set them to alpha add. Now the alpha add blend mode is actually going off the screen capture, I am aware of that, but if you go down to the bottom, you'll see that alpha add near the bottom, and once you've applied it, you can see that we don't have any issues with the overlapping areas of the masks. So what we should have now is a pretty good composite key. If I just click into the alpha view, you can see there that we've got a good opaque area inside our subject. We've got good transparency around the outsides, and if we go in, we should see that we've got a nice soft matte line around the edge. So there we go, a composite key. We've got each of these is a two pass key with a hold out mat and an edge mask. And then what we've done then is that we've broken off separate areas, performed separate keying operations by basically making individualized color selections and individualized tolerance property adjustments to get better refinements to the edges the areas that are problematic. So hope you found this useful. Hope you'll find some way of applying this to your own projects.